Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, a new video emerges of the moments leading up to the deadly confrontation between Alex Preddy and ICE agents. The video comes as state criminal investigation teams are finally at the scene where Preddy was killed after being shut out by federal authorities. Tonight, we talk to a childhood friend of the ICU nurse.
President Trump makes his first on-camera comments about the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy, what he's saying about the deadly confrontation, and whether he's still supporting his Secretary of Homeland Security. I'm Mary Bruce, reporting from the White House.
Plus, a new shooting involving the Border Patrol in Arizona. One person is in critical condition. What we've learned.
Extreme cold from Texas to Florida to New York. 220 million Americans under cold weather alerts. Stalled 18-wheelers clogging the interstate in Louisiana days after the storm, as a new potential nor'easter is just days away. I'm Victor Oquendo, reporting from Tennessee tonight.
Inside the cockpits, an alarming simulation shows what pilots and crew saw just before the deadly midair collision between an American Airlines passenger jet and an Army Black Hawk helicopter, killing 67 people. What the simulations reveal, and all the missed warnings before the crash. The remarkable landing of a NASA plane coming down without landing gear. The settlement reached by TikTok ahead of a landmark social media trial alleging that some platforms are too addictive. The moment a child tumbles out of a moving SUV caught on camera, who ended up under arrest. From U.S. Marine and Presidential Guard to political prisoner and Ukraine fighter. Tonight, our sit down with Trevor Reed about his battle to regain his independence and why he used it to be back on the front lines.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin this busy Tuesday night with chilling new details in the deadly shooting of an ICU nurse in Minneapolis. Tonight, ABC News has obtained a new DHS preliminary report about the moment Alex Preddy was shot and killed. The incident unfolded as new video has emerged showing the minutes leading up to the deadly shooting by federal agents. At least 10 shots fired in just seconds. Preddy was hit multiple times. Faced with growing backlash within his own party, President Trump has sent in immigration czar Tom Homan to Minneapolis, pulling out Border Commander Greg Bovino. And after being shut out by federal authorities, state criminal investigation teams are now at the scene where Alex Preddy was shot and killed. We'll hear from a childhood friend of Preddy's in a moment, and we're standing by to hear from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. But first, Matt Rivers leads us off from Minneapolis tonight. Hi, Matt.
Hey, good evening, Lindsay. We're right outside the memorial that is now erected at the place where the shooting of Alex Preddy happened, just behind me here in Minneapolis. You can see a few dozen people out there right now, some chanting going on, candles being lit, the memorial still very much in effect just a few days after Preddy lost his life. This, as we're getting new information, brand new information from a preliminary report sent to Congress by DHS. Tonight, ABC News has learned that 2 federal agents opened fire in the fatal shooting of Minneapolis ICU nurse Alex Preddy. DHS sending a preliminary report to Congress outlining their initial findings after Saturday's fatal shooting. The report says DHS conducted, quote, a preliminary review of body camera footage. It's the first time the agency has acknowledged critical facts and that 2 firearms were discharged during the incident. The timeline notes that while agents attempted to take Preddy into custody, a struggle ensued. And, quote, a Border Patrol agent yelled, "He's got a gun," multiple times. According to the findings, approximately 5 seconds later, a Border Patrol agent discharged his Glock 19, and a Customs and Border Patrol agent fired his Glock 47 at Preddy. At no point in the report does DHS say Preddy attempted to reach for his weapon, and the DHS timeline does not mention Preddy was disarmed before he was shot, as video shows. Tonight, President Trump changing his tone after the ICU nurse was shot and killed here in Minneapolis. Late today, after sending border czar Tom Homan to Minneapolis to take over federal immigration operations, President Trump now saying in his words they're going to, quote, de-escalate a little bit.
You know, we have Tom Homan there now. We put him in there. He's great. And they met with the governor, the mayor, everybody else, and we're going to de-escalate a little bit.
But the president rejecting any characterization that the reduction in personnel was a retreat. Homan replacing Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Greg Bovino with some federal agents set to leave the city. Trump suggesting that maybe Bovino was not the right man for the mission. Bovino out just days after that ICU nurse was killed.
Bovino's very good, but he's a pretty out there kind of a guy, and in some cases that's good. Maybe it wasn't good here.
With no end in sight to the protests, growing scrutiny tonight over what really happened in the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy. Eyewitness videos of Preddy's killing show the Veterans Affairs nurse never brandished a gun, as multiple Trump administration officials claimed just hours after the fatal shooting Saturday. This was what Secretary Kristi Noem told the American people a short time after the news broke, drawing outrage.
This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
They have just shot a man.
They shot that guy.
President Trump pressed today if Alex Preddy's shooting was justified.
Well, you know, we're doing a big investigation. I want to see the investigation. I'm going to be watching over it. I want a very honorable and honest investigation. I have to see it myself.
Alex Preddy's sister calling her brother her hero and blasting what she called disgusting lies spread about Alex. We asked people who live here in this community if they think things will really change.
Do you think it might be an inflection point for the city here where things might change because of it?
God, I hope so. I don't think that... I feel like a lot of people have this strong fear that we're a test city, and I hope that the test, they realize it's a failure.
Matt Rivers joins us now from Minneapolis. So, Matt, we're learning now about a new shooting involving federal immigration enforcement agents again, this time at the Arizona-Mexico border. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Lindsay. Details still coming in, both about the shooting and killing of the ICU nurse here in Minneapolis, but also this new shooting out of Arizona. The FBI now investigating after a U.S. Border Patrol agent shot and critically wounded a person near the Arizona-Mexico border. Authorities saying that that person allegedly assaulted a federal officer. But again, details still very much coming in. Meanwhile, back here on the streets of Minneapolis, many questioning here if things will begin to change after the president's promise of de-escalation earlier today. Lindsay, only time will tell.
Sure it will. Matt, thank you so much. And let's bring in Travis Vanden Heuvel, a childhood friend of Alex Preddy. Travis, we thank you for your time. We are so sorry for your loss. Just give us a sense of how you're holding up right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lindsay, and thanks for your commitment to getting the truth about Alex out there. I think sharing his story and who he was as a person is important. But we're doing well in Green Bay.
Let's start with that. Who was he as a person? There is this narrative, as you know, that some have gone out really talking across the country about labeling him as a domestic terrorist and beyond. How would you describe him? You knew him.
I would describe Alex the way most of us who knew him, and that would be incredibly kind, incredibly caring, someone who stood up for the underdog, someone who was compassionate and committed to service. And we saw that play out in his career path. And then, unfortunately, a lot of us saw his kindness and compassion come out in the caring for a stranger in the last moments of his life.
So how did it happen? Did you find out first that it was Alex who had been shot, or you just heard that there was a report someone had been shot and killed?
Yeah, so my friendship with Alex started when we were kids with the Green Bay Boy Choir, and I had learned early Saturday morning that someone had been shot and killed in Minneapolis and was heartbroken. And later that afternoon, our assistant choir director, who both Alex and I had, reached out to let me know that it was him who was the victim of that terrible shooting.
What was your immediate reaction?
I think shock was the immediate reaction. Being just one state away in Wisconsin, what's been happening in Minnesota has been close to home. But knowing personally who was killed and having memories to associate with that person brought it even closer to home.
I imagine it's one thing for a person to lose their life and be killed in the physical sense, and then another for their reputation to then be destroyed. So what was your reaction when your friend was described as a domestic terrorist?
Anger, frustration, sadness. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of character assassination these days with this administration, and rather than getting to the truth and finding the facts, there's just a quick gut reaction to try to blame the victims and deflect attention away from responsibility.
What would you like to see happen now?
I think I would like to see more people be like Alex, and that is kind and standing up for what's right and just and good. And the more facts that come out about this and who Alex was, the more we're going to see that he was on the right side of history here.
Travis, we thank you so much for your time and really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and insight about your friend.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And now we'd like to bring in the mayor of St. Paul, Minnesota, Kali Hirsch, who was sworn into office barely 3 weeks ago, entering city halls. The federal immigration enforcement agents were ramping up operations throughout the Twin Cities. Mayor, thanks so much for joining us. How has the tenor of the immigration enforcement operations changed in your city over the past few weeks?
I think that there's been a little known fact that some of this immigration enforcement has been going on since the middle of last year. And I think that it has just been amping up with it, adding additional groups, whether it's targeting the Southeast Asian community to now the status of our current communities and our Somali community, that its tensions have been heightened, and targeting of specific groups has increased those tensions.
What have your day-to-day interactions with federal immigration agents been like?
The truth is that because we don't coordinate with federal agents, that we actually don't have day-to-day interaction. What we're doing is responding on the streets when we are getting notifications from residents and from people concerned, vehicles that look like they might be ICE or DHI or DHS. And so that we're responding in the moment when we are getting information from our community members.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz activated the National Guard in St. Paul. Have there been misunderstandings or even confrontations between ICE and your state and local officials?
I would say that there's always some confusion as to who is doing what. We have calls from residents worried about ICE interaction, and we have encouraged our residents that when they are scared or they don't know the situation, to call our police, and our police will come. So local police has been trying to understand situations when they are on scenes. We've also had to ask, ICE agents and federal agents to leave our parks properties because we do not allow staging on those properties. So our interaction is when we are meeting these instances in the moment.
Just after you took office, of course, Renee Good was shot and killed in Minneapolis. You and other local leaders were subpoenaed as part of a federal investigation which accused you of impeding ICE operations. Is there any stretch of the imagination where any of your actions could be interpreted as impeding operations?
It would be hard for me to find an example of one where we would have that. I mean, that would require us understanding and knowing what their operations are. And I have tried, even before I became a mayor as a state representative, to try to understand ICE's operation, who they were targeting. It was difficult even then. And that was back in April of 2025 to understand their work. And so it's really difficult to be impeding something when the plan that there isn't a plan laid out so that you know what it is that is happening in the operations or the missions that are being executed. I would be hard pressed to find anything that ever instructs anyone or provide any information that would be an obstruction to any ICE activity.
Many people, of course, were still mourning the loss of Renee Good, and then just days later, you hear another person has been killed. What was your reaction on Saturday?
It was heartbreaking, but when we have a federal administration that says that there's retribution to be paid and they make good on that, it is not surprising that we escalate to a place in which people are getting killed on the streets. I was heartbroken. I watched scenes unfold all day after that shooting, and the chaos and the destruction and the economic impact on our communities, the emotional impact. All of it has been just enormous. And we barely can recover from one incident before we roll into the next. And we're hoping that with this change that in leadership, that maybe we'll get a little bit of breather and we can hopefully reset.
You, your parents, your siblings, you are all immigrants yourselves. How would you say that immigrants have changed the face of St. Paul?
Immigrants are such a critical part of St. Paul. I mean, we are business owners, we are homeowners, we are daycare providers, we are developers, and we have professors and law enforcement officers. I mean, we are a part of every industry here in our city, and we are a city where the second largest demographic in the city of St. Paul is Asians. And we have been welcomed into the city, and it is really heartbreaking to see that the very people in which have brought back areas of town that were economically not doing well, that we are targeting those individuals and trying to send those individuals back, law-abiding citizens. I think that the narrative out there is that we're just targeting criminals, but that's just not true. And, we have our communities that have been contributing in many, many different ways. And I can't tell you that in a city that is almost majority minority, that the importance of our immigrants, they are every bit a part of St. Paul and our state.
St. Paul Mayor Cully Herr, we thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Tonight, President Trump is under growing pressure from within his own party to ease tensions in Minneapolis. And late today, the president was asked if he believes the shooting was justified. Mary Bruce reports from the White House.
Tonight, President Trump standing by embattled Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem after she falsely accused Alex Preddy of, quote, brandishing his gun and said the ICU nurse was there to, quote, kill law enforcement.
I think she's doing a very good job.
Sources tell ABC News Kristi Noem went to the White House to make her case to the president last night, requesting a meeting after Trump announced border czar Tom Homan would take over operations in Minnesota. Their Oval Office sit-down, sources say, lasted more than 2 hours. Not in the room, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, one of the main architects of Trump's hardline immigration crackdown. In the hours after Preddy was killed, Miller posted that the ICU nurse was an assassin, a comment reposted by Vice President J.D. Vance. Today, Miller accompanying Trump to Iowa. The president asked about Miller's comments.
Do you think he was acting as an assassin in Minneapolis?
Who is that?
Mr. Preddy, your deputy chief of staff said
not
that.
isn't it? No.
But Trump then shifting blame to Preddy, saying he shouldn't have been carrying a gun, even though he had a permit and never drew his weapon.
But that being said, you can't have guns. You can't walk in with guns. You just can't. And you can't, listen, you can't walk in with guns. You can't do that. But it's a very unfortunate incident.
Trump has championed gun rights for years, including the right of people to protest while carrying weapons. But later in the day, he doubled down, criticizing Preddy again for being armed.
I don't like that he had a gun. I don't like that he had 2 fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff.
Tonight, gun owners of America responding. Peaceful protests while armed isn't radical, it's American. The First and Second Amendments protect those rights, and they always have.
Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House. So, Mary, how is Capitol Hill responding to Secretary Noem's job performance on this?
Yeah, well, Lindsay, the president may be standing by Secretary Noem, but on Capitol Hill now, lawmakers of both parties say she needs to go. Some are calling for her to be fired, others saying she should be impeached. Lindsay.
Mary Bruce from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary. For more now, we're joined by Nebraska Republican Congressman Mike Flood. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. We learned late today the DHS has sent a report on the shooting to Congress. That at no point in that report does it say Preddy attempted to reach for his weapon. Of course, we also just heard from a childhood friend of his describing him in a totally different way from DHS Chief Kristi Noem, who called him a domestic terrorist right after the shooting and said that he brandished a gun. No video have we seen shows him brandishing a gun. How would you say that she's handled this case?
Well, here's what I do when I'm representing the people of Nebraska and something like this happens. I take my time to understand the facts and I urge calm. We need an investigation here. We need an independent investigation. We need to get to the facts. And then we're a nation of laws. We have to apply those laws to the facts and let this investigation go where it's going to go. This could be justified. There could be issues with it. We simply don't know. And I just think, especially in a situation where you have so much emotion and so many people involved, one of the things we fail to talk about, and I just saw your interview with the St. Paul mayor, she said, we don't interact with ICE. How do you expect things to work if a state and a city government refuse to help a federal agency enforce the laws that members of Congress from all states have enacted? that is a recipe for disaster. And so, well, everybody in Minnesota that's maybe on that side of the line wants to say, Donald Trump this, ICE that. If you don't even allow your police to help federal agents enforce the law, this doesn't work. This stuff happens. So I really get frustrated when I hear that.
Sure. I don't know, though, that she was saying that she is not allowing them to. It's just that it's not happening. For example, we here at ABC News reached out to ICE today for comment and did not hear back. So it could be, we don't know which side is refusing to work with the other. But I do want to move on just to get your opinion here with regard to the two Republican senators, Lisa Murkowski and Tom Tillis, who both said that Kristi Noem should be out of a job. Do you agree?
See, there again, I don't know the facts. I think Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, should appear before Congress and answer questions. That is the role of Congress, to engage in oversight, let members on both sides of the aisle ask every single question we can think of to get to the bottom of this. That should be done as we do almost over every agency. And it sounds like the good news here is that the president has been talking to the governor and to the mayor, and we are going in a much better direction following the weekend. And that was welcome news to everybody in America. That should be uniting us. And I was very pleased to see his leadership yesterday on that front.
You've said that we should all want peace to win over chaos. When you look at that video, how did with the federal agents, how their reaction, how did that make you feel when you saw it, especially when Kristi Noem had come out and said that they were saying, oh, that he was brandishing a gun? Clearly, the video suggests otherwise.
You know, I don't want to see this on our streets. I don't want to see this happen. Now, the reality is, over the 250 years this country has been there, we have gone through periods of time like this. We have to take each day one at a time and do the best job we can to enforce the law. And we need the cooperation of states and cities. That's number one. Number two, I think that after this weekend, there's going to be an investigation. It is going to present findings, and then actions will or will not be taken based on what's there. We in Congress need to provide some oversight to make sure we're there. But let's not forget, there are a lot of Americans that don't get a lot of airtime on TV stations across this nation that want these laws enforced. They want these laws enforced. They do not want to see what happened in Minneapolis on Saturday happen, but they do want illegal immigrants to be removed from this country. And that is part of what is the overriding principle that brings us even to this point. So hopefully we can continue the focus on deporting illegal immigrants in the United States.
I would agree with you. A lot of people do want that when they're criminal, right? And it seems that the 73% I recently read of the people who've been detained do not have any kind of record. They don't have any kind of criminal or violent past. But moving forward, just today, the president said, you can't have guns. You can't walk in with guns. As you know, Preddy had a permit to carry in a state of Minnesota where it's legal to do so. The gun owners of America today said you absolutely may walk around with guns and you absolutely may peacefully protest while armed. Is the president wrong here?
Well, we have a First and a Second Amendment, and they're both very important to me and a lot of Americans. The fact that the victim in this case had a permit and he was carrying it lawfully, based on the facts that I know right now, obviously that's something that has to be taken into consideration in this investigation. I wasn't there. I haven't seen every single video, and I don't know what the law enforcement officer was reacting to when he said there's a gun. Where was the gun? How was the gun being held? I don't know the answer to any of that. So I don't think anybody can draw any bright lines and say, you're right, you're wrong. I know that you can carry a firearm in this country legally under the Second Amendment, and you have the right to free speech and the right to protest. And I support both of those things. But it has to be done in a manner that protects public safety. And I'm not one to cast a shadow on this gentleman because I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't present.
Right. But you do, based on the Constitution, you do believe that he had a right to bring a gun to the protest, which the president is saying he did not.
I do. I mean, if you have a Second Amendment right, now there are certain places you cannot take a gun. Here he is on a public street. That's the way it looks to me. And so it wasn't like he was in a facility that can ban concealed guns. So just got to take it one day at a time. Everybody wants to assign who did this or who did that, within minutes or hours or days after something that has happened. That's the beautiful thing here. We have an investigation. It's going to lead us to the facts, and the facts will determine the next steps.
So appreciate the conversation, Representative Flood. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
We're getting word of a disturbance at Ilhan Omar's town hall in Minneapolis. The representative there. This, of course, comes as tensions are still high after the shooting of Alex Preddy. Let's take a listen.
I don't know.
And for more now, we're joined by Jay O'Brien. Hard to see exactly from that vantage point exactly what happened. What can you tell us, Jay?
Yeah, Lindsay, so the Capitol Hill team and I have been monitoring this town hall of Ilhan Omar's because it's being held in Minneapolis, and Omar had been in the president's crosshairs for really months here. He's ramped up criticism of her for a long time now. And of course, as these events have reached a boiling point in Minneapolis, we were waiting to see exactly what would transpire in this town hall. And what exactly precipitated this video that you're seeing now on your screen was Omar was calling for, as she has in the past, ICE to be abolished. She also said that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem should be removed from her job. And as she was saying that man you saw in the beginning of the clip seemed to charge, you're looking at the moment there, the podium. Those in the crowd, according to the audio that we heard of this interaction, say that he sprayed her with something. We don't know what that is, and those in the crowd seem to have not known what that was. The man was immediately detained by what looks like private security. You can see there on the side. And what you don't see in this video is Congresswoman Omar saying that she wants to continue the town hall. And those around her say that they want her to end the town hall. There are concerns for her safety. There are concerns about what exactly may have been sprayed on her. And she says that she wants to continue the town hall. And she says, and I have to bleep the language here, but these bleeping bleep won't stop her, to paraphrase the rest, from continuing her remarks. So as I look here on the feed down here, she is continuing to speak. The town hall goes on, but obviously this flashpoint, this interaction coming really in the early moments of it beginning.
Okay, so she did continue on, and just give us a little bit of a sense. Obviously, we know that she and President Trump have traded barbs back and forth before, but this latest, the ICE ramp-ups have happened in her district there in Minnesota. Give us a sense of what her stance is on these ICE raids.
It's happened in her state. She's joined a chorus of Democrats who have said that they want ICE abolished. She's on the further left, right, of the Democratic coalition. She's also called for Kristi Noem to be impeached. And that's a view that's shared by an even larger number of Democrats than those who call for the abolishment of ICE. We've seen on Capitol Hill roughly 111 Democrats in the House sign on to a petition to impeach Kristi Noem. That's nowhere near the number of signatures that petition would need. But it's an argument that some Democrats on the Hill are making. And what we even saw tonight on Capitol Hill was at least two Republican senators, Tom Tillis of North Carolina and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, say that in the wake of the events that we've seen in Minneapolis, it's time for Secretary Noem, in their view, to go as well. Now, when you talk about this clash between Ilhan Omar and President Trump, Ilhan Omar has long been a target of President Trump's ire, but his comments about her have ramped up in recent weeks and months. In particular, as Minnesota fraud has come into the headlines, President Trump has repeatedly, without any evidence, tried to link Congresswoman Omar with the fraud scandals in that state, and arguing, again, without any evidence, that she was personally enriched by fraud in that state. So it has created this kind of powder keg of emotion. And what we heard from the gentleman that you saw in the clip there who rushed Congresswoman Omar, as she said that Kristi Noem should not be in office, he said that Congresswoman Omar, should not be in office as he rushed the podium there.
Okay, and Jay, before we let you go, we do have some sound from her after that disturbance. Let's take a look.
Everybody settle down. I'm going to finish my remarks. It is important for me to continue to lead my Democratic colleagues in demanding her resignation.
Okay, so the man was taken out, and as you said, Jay, she did continue on with her remarks addressing those assembled there. Jay, thank you so much for your late reporting tonight. Really appreciate it. Ecuador's Minister of Foreign Affairs has filed a complaint with the U.S. Embassy after ICE agents tried to enter the Ecuadorian consulate in Minneapolis without permission today. International law generally prohibits law enforcement authorities from entering foreign consulates or embassies without permission. A statement from the Ecuadorian Foreign Ministry says, in part, consulate officials immediately prevented the ICE officer from entering the consular building, thus ensuring the safety of the Ecuadorians present at the time and activating the emergency protocols issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Human Mobility. Now to the bitter cold and icy conditions across the country. Frigid temperatures remain in place for millions from the Midwest into the Northeast as the cleanup from the major winter storm continues in some areas, and the death toll from the storm is climbing. Plus, another nor'easter. Are you ready? It is forming. Our Ginger Z is tracking that for us. But first, Victor Oquendo reports from Tennessee tonight.
Tonight, the staggering death toll rising as temperatures plummet and a new storm threatens the East Coast. The lake-effect snow machine slamming western Michigan with sub-zero wind chills. In Grand Rapids, this pileup on State Route 6 involving at least 30 vehicles. The freezing temperatures stretching deep into the south, where ice storms have left hundreds of thousands without power for days. We're in Nashville's Bellevue neighborhood. This street is closed, and for good reason. On this side, you have all of these down power lines. There are as many as 10 broken power poles on this street alone. These linemen, they're working on repairing this one. Tom Ritchie and his wife Rebecca, who is pregnant, have been in the dark since Sunday. They're sleeping in front of their fireplace.
It's just been freezing cold. I mean, especially when the temperature drops at night. You know, we've got extra blankets, but the cold just seeps through.
In northern Louisiana, on a frozen Interstate 20, hundreds of drivers stranded. Lakeisha Fields and her children stuck for more than 24 hours.
The temperature dropped last night to 21. And I just thank God that we had blankets ahead of time. I always keep blankets in our vehicle. And that kept my kids warm.
Late today, sharing they are safe and now heading home. Ice turning deadly north of Dallas, where authorities in Bonham, Texas, say 3 brothers, ages 6, 8, and 9, died after falling through the ice on a private pond. More than 40 people killed across the storm zone. Bostonians digging out from a top 10 all-time snowstorm just shy of 2 feet.
This is tough. Like, once you get more than a foot in the city, there's no place to put it.
Cars encased in frozen snow all over New York City. And with wind chills in the single digits, enormous chunks of ice clogging New York's Hudson River. Officials suspending all ferry service citywide.
Victor Oquendo, thank you. Let's get right to our chief meteorologist, Ginger Z. Ginger, is it happening again? Another storm?
Well, the other storm is not concrete yet, but what I can tell you is it's going to get even colder than it has been, Lindsay, for so many of us. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Tomorrow morning is still a problem because there are still some folks that don't have power in the mid-south or south. Wind chills are going to still be sub-freezing all the way down to Fort Myers, Florida. But if you look up here, Washington, D.C. feels like 2 getting out the door tomorrow morning, 2 below New York City, 7 below for Boston, 13 below Pittsburgh. Now, if we go ahead and look at that Arctic air and that storm that you probably have been hearing a lot of chatter about, this is 5 days away still. So we're going to just watch for the short-term models to come in tomorrow. And what it is there's plenty of cold air, but it's the proximity of that low-pressure system to the coast. The closer it is, the more snow we'd be talking about potentially from North Carolina up to Boston. Again, we'll make this forecast a bit more concrete as it gets closer. But until then, what I can promise you is behind that, the cold air comes in even worse than it's been. So it is 5 for an actual air temperature Saturday morning in New York. Miami could drop to the coldest temperature they've seen in 15 years, into the 30s, Lindsay.
Oh, my goodness. The bearer of bad news today, Ginge. Thank you so much.
Yes, you got it.
TikTok has reached a settlement ahead of a landmark social media trial that started today. In a fascinating case, it involves Meta and YouTube, who for the first time will face a jury over allegations that their platforms are too addictive. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze has the latest for us. Elizabeth?
Lindsay, TikTok will no longer be going to trial in this landmark case. The social media giant reached a settlement with the plaintiff just ahead of jury selection, which kicked off today. So what this means is that YouTube and Meta, which owns Instagram and Facebook, will still be going to trial. This is in a courtroom in Los Angeles County. What this all centers on is a lawsuit brought by a 19-year-old who goes by the initials KGM. She claims that the tech companies borrowed techniques that were used by slot machines in the cigarette industry to hook younger users like her. She says that these features like endless scrolling or notifications got her addicted to social media, eventually leading to depression, anxiety, and body image issues. High-profile executives, including Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, are expected to take a stand in this trial. The tech companies have argued that there are other factors that contribute to the mental health of young users. Meta tells us that we strongly disagree with the allegations and are confident the evidence will show our longstanding commitment to supporting young people. Meta says it's made meaningful changes like introducing teen accounts. And YouTube also says that these lawsuit allegations aren't true, and providing young people with a safer, healthier experience has always been core to our work. Keep in mind, Snapchat was also named in this lawsuit. It settled last week. But bottom line here, this is really the first time we will see some of these social media giants face a jury over these claims that their platforms are addictive. Lindsay.
Elizabeth, thank you. Today, video shows a NASA plane making an emergency landing at Ellington Airport in Texas. Officials said that the plane experienced a mechanical issue upon landing on the runway that forced the pilot to land belly down. You see the massive sparks and flames there on the tarmac. A spokesperson from NASA said that the crew, they're all safe. An investigation into the cause is now underway. Coming up, check your cupboards. Why Keurig is recalling some of its popular K-Cups. Plus, Trevor Reed joins us here on Prime. The former U.S. Marine and former Russian prisoner discusses nearly 3 years behind bars and his adjustment back to life in the U.S. But next, the harrowing final moments for pilots in the deadly midair collision over Washington, D.C. 1 year ago. Our Gio Benitez has the new simulations of what those pilots last saw and heard. Welcome back, everyone. The National Transportation Safety Board held a hearing today on last year's deadly midair collision over Washington, D.C., involving an American Airlines passenger jet and an Army Black Hawk helicopter. More on the NTSB's findings in a moment. But first, here's Gio Benitez.
Tonight, the NTSB is pointing to a series of systemic failures that caused the deadly crash between an American Airlines flight and a Black Hawk helicopter over the Potomac. 67 people killed almost exactly a year ago.
This was preventable. This was 100% preventable.
The NTSB sharing these cockpit simulations demonstrating what the pilots likely saw on that January night, moments before the crash. From the chopper, we see that purple circle in the distance. That's the American Airlines flight. It appears to look like a light. Then, suddenly, the jet appears to be in view, but it was too late. It was also hard for that American Airlines flight making its final approach to see the Black Hawk circled in the distance. Seconds later, the impact. Investigators saying the air traffic controller told the chopper to pass behind the plane, but because of a transmission issue, the chopper crew never heard the command. Controllers had been sounding the alarm about traffic at Reagan National for years, and during a lengthy NTSB board hearing today, investigators slammed the FAA for ignoring the warnings.
How is it that no one, absolutely no one, in the FAA did the work to figure out there was only 75 feet, at best, 75 feet of vertical separation?
Our thanks to Gio. This deadly midair crash appears to have been a perfect storm of things that have been brewing for decades. Let's dig deeper into the NTSB's report by the numbers. The NTSB chair said that a $400 GPS device known as ADS-BN would have prevented this crash 17 times. That's the number of times the agency recommended this GPS device be required in aircraft since 2006. But according to the NTSB, the FAA has repeatedly disregarded that recommendation. The NTSB chair also said that the system would have alerted the American Airlines crew 59 seconds before the crash that they were going to collide, and the helicopter crew would have been alerted 48 seconds before the crash. The Army has since installed the system. In a statement, the FAA said that it has reduced hourly plane arrivals at Reagan Airport from 36 to 30 and increased staff. Coming up, after serving more than 900 days in Russian custody, Marine veteran Trevor Reed joins us to discuss his new book, which details his imprisonment and his subsequent Ukrainian military service. Hey everyone, welcome back to Prime. Here's a look at the stories making headlines right now. ABC News has learned new details in the deadly shooting of ICU nurse Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. DHS sent a preliminary report to Congress outlining a review of the fatal shooting. The agency acknowledged that 2 firearms were discharged during the incident. Late today, President Trump said that the administration is going to de-escalate a little bit in Minneapolis. Bone-chilling cold and icy conditions are complicating cleanup efforts from the winter storm that slammed much of the country. Frigid temperatures remain in place for millions from the Midwest into the Northeast, and another Arctic blast will arrive by the end of the week. That will bring bitter cold to the east and much of the south. Famed composer Philip Glass has called off a scheduled world premiere at the Kennedy Center. In a post, Glass wrote, quote, "Symphony No. 15 is a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, and the values of the Kennedy Center today are in direct conflict with the message of the symphony. This is the latest in a wave of cancellation since President Trump ousted the previous leadership." The Buffalo Bills have a new head coach. The team announced it has promoted offensive coordinator Joe Brady to that position. Brady replaces Sean McDermott, who was fired last week after the Bills lost in overtime to the Denver Broncos in the AFC divisional round of the playoffs. And still ahead, video captures the shocking moment where a toddler falls out of a moving vehicle. And Trevor Reed tells us about his new book, recounting his time in prison in Russia and volunteering to fight in Ukraine. In August of 2019, former U.S. Marine and presidential guard Trevor Reed was arrested in Russia on charges that he consistently has said were false. Reed was sentenced to 9 years in prison, where he endured inhumane conditions. After 985 days, Reed was freed in a prisoner swap during the Biden administration. That was just 2 months after the start of the Ukraine war, which is now approaching its 4th year. Faced by the horror he endured, Reed trained relentlessly to regain his strength and would volunteer in Ukraine to fight the Russians. Trevor Reed is here now to share his story in his new book, Retribution. Trevor, as I just was saying to you earlier, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. We're so glad that you're back. As you know, we talked to your mom, your dad, your sister several times over the years that you were abused and held in a Russian prison. They kept fighting for you. At one point, your dad said, every day there is like an eternity. Every year that you're there is like an eternity. They fought for you. What kept you fighting? What sustained you while you were behind bars?
A lot of it was knowing, that my family was there and missing me, my girlfriend, and that they were doing whatever they could to get me out. A lot of it was just, to kind of spite the Russians and kind of make, fighting them and resisting them like my life. And that's largely what my life consisted of while I was in there, was just resisting and, trying to make sure that they couldn't break me.
You've written that in order to communicate with the outside world, you had to deal with the Russian mafia. You were in and out of solitary confinement. Just give us a sense of the day-to-day life.
It varies from, the beginning part at pretrial detention. That's pretty monotonous. You're locked in a cell for 23 hours a day. You get an hour to walk in like a semi-closed space on the roof, and just dealing with the prisoners in that environment. You're going through the kangaroo court system there, which takes up a lot of your time, and just trying to find something to focus on and have meaning. The forced labor camp was significantly worse. I had refused to work there because, I felt it would be unethical to work for a government who was wrongfully detaining Americans. And in response to that, the Russians punished me. So I was put into solitary confinement for usually about 15 days at a time, sometimes for longer, a month or longer. And they also use the cold there as a weapon against you. try to get you to break and, reconsider what you've decided to do. The food there was obviously very scant, so you're also dealing with mild starvation while you're in there. A lot of different things, and then trying to maintain a relationship with other prisoners there as best you can to survive.
Talk about the moment that you found out, I'm going home.
I didn't really know until I was about to be exchanged. So they kept that pretty hushed. And even when I did sort of, get a glimpse into knowing that they were going to release me, I wasn't really sure I could believe that. So everything in there is kind of built on just lying to you. The only news that you have there is propaganda, so you're not really sure what to believe. When I was on the jet with the FSB flying to Turkey, at that point I knew, okay, I'm probably gonna go home.
And once you were back on U.S. soil, you have said that you weren't mentally or physically prepared for life as a free man. Tell us what that adjustment was like.
It's really difficult when you come back. I mean, you've been isolated for a very long time before coming home. You're not really dealing in prison with normal human interactions, normal emotions. So, you're kind of deprived of being with people that you love and that you care about. And a lot of your daily interactions that you have with other human beings are more based on survival than they are, trying to live life. So when you come home, it's very difficult to go, from that survival mindset back into, I have people here who love me, who care about me, and trying to accept those emotions again, which you've, had to hide for survival.
Obviously, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of conviction. Some might say it's even crazy after you've been held for nearly 1,000 days. You come back home, you're a free man, and then you say, I'm going to go back and fight against the Russians on the behalf of the Ukrainians. What compelled you?
It was a combination of things. So obviously part of it was revenge. So I did feel that I needed to have that justice served, to know that they didn't get away with it, so that I could be myself again. But it wasn't only that. I also felt like, when Russia invaded Ukraine, I could empathize with the Ukrainians, and I understood, if what they put me through, what they put their own citizens through was as bad as it was, then what's happening in Ukraine must be much worse. And so I knew, I had the training and the experience to help them, and I had an ethical obligation to do that. And then the last part of it was, I wanted Russia to pay a price.
Your time fighting in Ukraine ended when you almost lost your life from a landmine there. Do you feel that resolution? Are you glad you went back and fought?
Yes, I am. I think if I hadn't gone back and fought, I wouldn't have been able to be myself. And I also would have had a nagging feeling of, I could have done something, but I chose not to help the Ukrainians. Serving in Ukraine was the honor of my life.
Trevor, we thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be able to see you and talk with you in person. Thank you for the time. Trevor's book, Retribution, is available wherever books are sold. And still ahead, the countdown to the BAFTAs is on. We'll tell you which films scored the most nominations ahead of next month's ceremony. Stay with us. Caught on tape, a toddler falls out of a moving vehicle. Thousands of layoffs announced in the U.S. and a mountain lion caught on the streets of San Francisco. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. A mother has been arrested after her 19-month-old child tumbled out of her SUV while she was driving. Video shows the SUV making a left turn at an intersection. That's when the front passenger door opens and the toddler falls to the ground. The SUV immediately stopped, nearly causing a crash with the car behind it. Police say the 19-month-old child sustained injuries and was taken to an area hospital for treatment. The toddler is expected to make a full recovery. Keurig is recalling more than 80,000 decaf coffee pods because they may actually be caffeinated. The recall applies to the McCafe Premium Roast Decaf coffee pods and affects about 1,000 cartons sold nationwide. The company said that they were notifying consumers who may have purchased the product. Lights, camera, award season. Nominees for the 2026 British Academy Film Awards, or BAFTAs, were announced today ahead of the awards ceremony next month. One battle after another leads the way with 14 nominations in total, including a leading actor nod for Leonardo DiCaprio. Other films with multiple nominations include Sinners with 13, followed by Hamnet and Marty Supreme with 11 each. The BAFTAs fall on February 22nd, just 3 weeks before the Academy Awards. Amazon announced today that they are closing Amazon Fresh and Amazon Go grocery stores across the country. The company is doubling down on same-day delivery for groceries while focusing more investment on Whole Foods markets, which they acquired back in 2017. Meanwhile, Amazon is also winding down its partnership with UPS, which will result in reducing operational positions by up to 30,000 this year. And another company, Pinterest, is terminating up to 15% of its workforce to focus more on investments in artificial intelligence. A young mountain lion has been located after being spotted prowling the streets of downtown San Francisco, while officials warned people in the area to take caution. The animal was later tranquilized and will be released back into the wild by wildlife officials. Mountain lions typically disperse around this age, seeking a habitat far away from their birthplace. Big Bear's beloved bald eagle couple, Jackie and Shadow, have laid their first eggs of the season. It's something that was anticipated by many after the two were seen building up their nest. The pair has raised several eaglets in the past, including 2 that were born last year. The first egg of the season was spotted on Friday, and the second egg was spotted on Monday. It remains to be seen whether Jackie will lay any more. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Lindsay Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Good night.